Hi everyone, welcome back. In today's lesson, we are going to move back to the Western Hemisphere and talk about some of the Latin American revolutions. We'll focus on Haiti as well as parts of Venezuela, Argentina, Mexico, and wrap up in Brazil and Peru. So make sure you're in your interactive notebook and you're following along. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We're on page 6 of your interactive notebook. And again, today we're going to run through some of the Latin American revolutions. As we've done with the other episodes in this unit, we are just going to briefly skim over these because we're just kind of giving you an overview, not a dive in deep on all of these, because all of them could devote a full course to them because there's lots of stuff that happens. But let's start off with our essential question. Spurred by discontent and Enlightenment ideas, how did the peoples in Latin America fight colonial rule? As I said in the intro, we're going to talk about a couple different places, and we're just going to, like I said, skim the surface. So colonial society is very divided in Latin America during this time period. This is kind of a common theme that we're seeing through these different revolutions. We have social classes, and the guys that are at the bottom, the guys and the gals that are at the bottom aren't so happy anymore with these ideas coming out of the Enlightenment that, all men should be created equal, or men and women, people have the opportunity for life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. People are like, I don't like this whole one guy in charge and I'm down at the bottom of the barrel. Let's flip this on its head. So that, again, like I said, it's a common theme that we're seeing in these different revolutions. So the social classes, the way that they're structured in Latin America, first off, we have the Peninsulares. I'm really going to try and work on my Spanish here, or my Latin American speak here, so I apologize for bad pronunciation. But the Peninsulares, those are people who were native to Spain, or they were born in Spain, and they headed the colonial government and society. So they're controlling people in these different colonies. Then we have the Creoles. They are American born, but they have Spanish roots. So American born Spaniards who could become army officers. So this would kind of be the equivalent to English who came over to the American colonies and then maybe had kids. The first generation was from England and now they're living in America. So same thing here, but we're flipping it from, instead of being from England, we're from Spain. So those who came over from Spain had kids, their next generation, they're going to be called Creoles. Then we have the Mestiços. They have both European as well as Native American ancestry. And then we have the Mulattoes. They're going to have both European and African ancestry living in South America. And then our lowest class is going to be a mixture of slaves and Native Americans, and they're going to, again, be at the bottom of society. So the first place we're going to talk about is the revolution in Haiti. Haiti previously was known as Saint-Domingue. It was a colony of France, and they're technically the first to gain independence in Latin America. It started off in 1791. We have a gentleman by the name of Toussaint Louverture, and he leads a slave revolt in France. Against the French in Saint-Domingue. The slave population realized that they heavily outnumbered their masters and they were fed up. So under his leadership, they lead this revolt. By 1802, Louverture decided to make an agreement with the French that he would halt his participation in the revolution and halt the whole revolution if the French agreed to end slavery in Haiti, or Saint-Domingue as it was known at the time. He's actually captured and seized. They put him in prison, and unfortunately about a year later he dies in a French prison. Luckily for the Haitians, Toussaint's lieutenant Jean-Jacques Dessalines, he picks up the cause, and in 1804, he officially declares Haiti as an independent country, or he declares Saint-Domingue as the independent country, and he goes on to rename it Haiti. So Saint-Domingue becomes the first Black colony to win independence in this area. Like I said, he renames the country to Haiti, which meant mountainous land in the native population's language. Let's move next to talking about some of the different Creoles who gained independence in a little bit more of South America, moving more towards Argentina and Venezuela. So the Creoles, as we said, were the kind of like the second class here. They were the least oppressed, and they were actually the best educated. Many of these young men go off to travel back to Europe to be educated, because remember, their parents had probably immigrated, if we want to say that, from Spain, had them in Latin America. They send their kids back to Europe to gain an education. And so while they're back in Europe gaining this education, they learn about the Enlightenment. They bring back these ideas, and they want revolution when they come back. So they're spurring these revolutions. Two of the most famous Creoles that are spurring revolution, one is Simon Bolivar, and he was a very wealthy Creole who led a revolution in Venezuela. And he, in 1811, he actually says, all right, we're done with Spain. We are declaring independence. It kicks off a war. And long story short, by 1821, they officially win that war and they win independence. From here, Bolivar actually goes on to meet another Creole leader, Jose. I'm going to jack his name up, but here we go. Jose de San Martin. He was the leader of Argentinian forces, kind of doing the exact same thing that Bolivar was doing, but he's down in Argentina. By 1816, he declared Argentina as independent. He goes on to also help liberate Chile. And then these two men kind of meet up, and they decide by 1824 to help liberate the country of Peru. So they drive the Spanish out there as well. So they're very successful in a lot of revolutions throughout South America. Let's also talk about Mexico. They're going to kick out the Spanish as well. We've got a lot of stuff going on in Latin America at this time. This one, there's a lot of stuff going on. It kind of goes through a couple different leaders because some weren't as successful, but it starts off with Padre Miguel Hidalgo. He is the one who takes the first steps for Mexican independence. In 1810, he called for a rebellion with the peasants there. They call for rebellion against Spain, and they march on Mexico City. Unfortunately, they are defeated, and so somebody else picks up the cause. Another priest, Padre Jose Maria Morales, he leads the revolution for about 4 years, and unfortunately, he's defeated in 1815. From here, there's some problems back in Spain, and by 1821, a gentleman by the name of Augustin de Iturbide, trying here, guys. He actually goes on to proclaim independence after a revolution in Spain. So again, there were some problems going on there. This guy comes back, and it's a little bit ironic because this guy, Augustine, he was actually the one who defeated Morelos back in 1815. So it's funny that he squashed the revolution in 1815, but 16 years later, he's like, oh no, wait, Mexico's independent. I think that's a good idea. So that's the way in which Mexico gets their independence from Spain. The last group I want to talk about are the Brazilians. They have a royal liberator, or they have a bloodless revolution, which was nice for them. So in 1807, our friend Napoleon, which we didn't spend too much time talking about, but he was in charge of France during this time period, he decided to invade Portugal. And so in response to that, the royal family from Portugal decides to move to Brazil to escape that invasion. By 1815, the Portuguese court, or that royal family, decides to go back to Portugal after Napoleon has been defeated. He had a slew of problems in France during he's exiled a bunch of times. But anyway, look up on Napoleon. So Napoleon's out of Portugal by 1815. And this is where the Portuguese prince, Dom Pedro, he decides to stay behind in Brazil. And the Brazilians are happy with them. They like him. So they actually ask him, like, hey, you want to stick around and run our country? Any chance? Dom Pedro says, sure, why not? So by September of 1822, he officially declares Brazil's independence. He's going to help lead it, and they're going to be out of control from Portugal. So by 1830, pretty much all of Latin America, all the different regions that were fighting for independence, they are all free and clear of their colonial rulers. So lots of stuff, like I said, going on in Latin America because there's so many little tiny countries going on down there. So again, this is just to skim the surface, but lots of stuff going on, and again, influenced by those Enlightenment ideas. So make sure this is in your interactive notebook, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.